So, the title of the video will probably express my sentiments accurately. We're going with the pilot style headphones. A little bit better mic quality. Gonna be getting a camera and actual mic soon. But for now, just what I'm trying to do at this point is just catalog as a sort of virtual diary entry, if you will. Not that you're going to be hearing about all of my insecurities and all that bullshit. No, we're just going to be talking about the state of the world. I'm, for full disclosure, coming from the the heart of empire, the United States, and calling it that. That gives you a little bit of an idea of the angle that this is going to be at, and this is a message for designed for pretty much everybody, but in particularly is going to be directed at Americans for not giving in to despair. But why it's also meant for the rest of the world is because we need to resist to help out the rest of the world that is just subject to the whims of reckless and vicious American imperialism and violence. And I'm cataloging these as well because in whatever happens after this for days going forward, and we're just trying to figure out what to do with ourselves in terms of trying to show fellow people here and the rest of the world where we stood in these crazy times that are going to be very likely just fundamentally transformative for just global economic and political relations, and on a more individual level, just how we are dealing with each other as people. And we need to resist here because the rest of the world is counting on us and has been resisting American imperialism enough. We can't ask any more from the oppressed people of the world. And it's hard to ask a lot from ourselves here, admittedly. One, because we are complacent, but two, the helplessness is learned. I don't think people, on the whole, by and large, I do genuinely believe that 70% of people within the United States, which is still not enough, we need to work on continuing to actually bring people to a full acknowledgement that the way that things are set up is unacceptable, and that we absolutely need a new system of governance, of economics, of just the way that this place treats the other world is coming back home, and we're feeling both the knife's edge of U.S. imperialism being turned on us, but we're also feeling that pressure from the rest of the world of, yes, we do not like the United States or Americans, because letting this crime go unpunished would make it seem like you're complicit in it and that you're low-key okay with it. And like I said, I think 70% of people are not. and I could be wrong on that number. Is it coming from anything? Just a general, the general like broad guesstimate of the ratio of people that still support Donald Trump to those that do not support Donald Trump is the general idea that I have for it. And this isn't a just because the whole system's broken. It doesn't matter even if he goes away, although, people have legitimate fears at this point that they'll cancel elections. But here's what needs to be hammered home. That wouldn't even fucking matter because you already live in a fascist shithole. Okay? Can you accept that now? Like, this is me speaking to Americans. Like, can you stop lying to yourself about how free we are here? Where, and this is where it gets twisted. I'm not gonna even bring up the Renee Good stuff right now because we gotta stop just centering just violence done on U.S. citizens as an even graver crime. One, that's not true. Uh, Palestinian Americans have been getting murdered over in the West Bank and in Gaza, and you don't hear a fucking word about that. Oh, we're getting demonetized. I don't even care. This is all again primarily for archiving and primarily for hey, I'm not gonna sit behind a screensaver. I'm a human being. I'm also gonna get a better camera. And plan on doing gameplay commentary stuff in the future because that's another good way to consume this kind of stuff. But this is, designed kind of as like an ASMR thing, whatever, have it on in the background, and I'll get some gaming stuff up because I just need people to like just kind of listen for a second to the fact, and I don't know why it's so hard for us to just be willing to accept that every single human being, regardless of the nation state they were born in, is of completely equal value. Uh, but we should be mourning the loss of just the 80 innocent Venezuelans in Caracas that died in this staged and it doesn't matter if it was illegal or against the Constitution. Like, you can't kidnap. You can't just kidnap the leader of a sovereign nation. That's an act of war. Like, you realize we are just at war with Venezuela at this point. I mean, you went and you stole their president. I would like it if it happened here. I'll just put that out there. Like, let's do a swap. Let's just do it. It's like a reality TV show where a different parent becomes the mom or dad of a new family. Let's just, yeah. I mean, kind of. Obviously, Venezuela is getting the raw end of the deal there, but but also, yeah, with that whole thing, one, just not even a word about, do we care about the 80 Venezuelans just murdered in this blatant act of war? The people that are like, it's not in the Constitution to do this. Like, stop talking about the Constitution like that has any actual value to the people that are perpetrating these acts of violence and cruelty and violations of national sovereignty. Like, they're just, they murder people in boats, and they've been murdering people in boats in the prelude to this thing. What makes you think that? Oh wait, better. Oh, looks like the headphones died. It's just like, oh, better consult the Constitution first. The sound quality is going to be a little bit lower in this one, I guess, now that the headphones are dead. So I'll cut it off relatively soon. This will be a shorter vlog. I've got a couple of others on here that, um, well, admittedly, probably shit sound quality too. But um, it just needs to be said that what happened there is stop trying to justify it by saying Maduro was a cruel authoritarian dictator. Like, congratulations, you just fell for the Iraq war trap in real time. Can you learn something from history? Um, and the war in Afghanistan trap because Osama bin Laden might be there, so let's go to war with an entire country that he might be in, and then he ended up being in a mansion, probably controlled by Pakistani ISI, and honestly, the U.S. probably knew he was there the whole time. That whole fucking we trace the courier story. We see at this point that they just manufacture um, their operations with this somehow still botched kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro. They succeeded in their mission of performing an act of war, but yeah, still somehow needed to murder 80 people for no reason. Apparently, they were just executing members of Maduro's security team. So, yeah, war crimes right there. Geneva Convention, whatever, the UN, whatever international institution that the U.S. will not abide by, but will leverage to protect its own interests. Throw them in the mix too. And people will say, well, look, he was cracking down on protesters and opposition. And they're even starting to say that in Iran when clearly Mossad and CIA who have been since the 80s, I mean, late 70s, early 80s, in earnest, but even before, because the CIA and Mossad were involved in Iran to thwart leftist movements there before the Islamic Revolution took place. In fact, it might have been a communist revolution, a true proletarian revolution, instead of a Shia Islamic one, if the CIA was not involved. But that's a story for another day, but relevant to these times is clearly CIA and Mossad backed ops are um, supposedly mad with the Iranian government, but that's being this is what Western media does is they'll focus on this story and they get you to support an element of the overall project of the domination of international finance capital, which would include destabilizing Iran in order to steal its oil. And what happened in Venezuela was just a just robbery of not just maybe the largest. I think it is the largest known oil reserve, so could end up being the largest. Who knows, how much work they're actually going to be able to get done. Solidarity with the Venezuelan people who are resisting the naked U.S. aggression and imperialism and theft. And and if we went into Gaza with the countless hundreds of thousands who are just human beings trying to live their lives, by and large, and anyone who's resisting is rightfully resisting occupation by a Zionist regime that has been propped up by Western interests in earnest since, I would say, especially during the second Aliyah, during the 1910s, if my timeline is correct on that. It's just been a, you know, 115 to 125 year project of ethnic cleansing and multiple genocides, and just the worst crimes against humanity you can ever imagine. If you look up Dar Yassin and Tarantula. I'm so sorry. And it's Masayama. Uh, Masima and Lifta. I'm so sorry for butchering a couple of those names there of massacres perpetrated by the Israeli occupation forces. But I believe it's Tarantula and Masaya. Um, and then Dar Yassin is just horrifying if you look that up. Apologies for my ignorance there. I am still unfortunately American, but and I said I was going to wrap this up because I'm sure the sound quality is not as good for ASMR purposes with the headphone dead, but um, for people that are listening in the U.S., these innocent victims of U.S. imperialism that are um, being completely disregarded by us and people. This is why people hate the United States. It's not just Donald Trump, is what I'm trying to say. And people think just getting rid of him is going to solve the problems. I'm trying to show you that the root of the issue is the uh, acts of U.S. violence and just some of the most disgusting, horrible crimes that have been committed in human history, on an industrial scale have been committed by the U.S. government for a century, like 2 centuries. I mean, longer than that if you want to count the founding. 250 years this year. Happy, you know, happy birthday, everybody. It might be 250 is an interesting number too, because uh, here's another thing I want to get into as well. Don't I know people are looking for something to hang on to give them some semblance of a tether to this reality, in order to try and explain to themselves why everything that's happening is happening, and going into stuff with just believing that it's Satan or believing that it's a cosmic possession, fighting a war over the planet. The planet's soul. Like, yeah, maybe there are esoteric forces in mind like that, but what can we do to fight back against those esoteric forces within our corporeal form? Well, we can try to materially impact things, and whatever those archon demons that people are believing in, whatever they're scheming to do, they're going to have to do it through human vessels at the end of the day. So if you focus on the material reality of, even if Mark Zuckerberg is a skinwalker, let's just pretend that he's a human and focus our interests on, overcoming his oppression, as human beings ourselves. Like, how can we stop Mark Zuckerberg, the human being? We'll worry about Mark Zuckerberg, the lizard person, once he sheds his skin. You know, I'm being facetious. Obviously, I do believe that Mark Zuckerberg has the biology of a human being. That's Let's get that out of the way. And what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, let's focus on resisting people oppressing us as people oppressing us. We don't need to give ourselves explanations about why and how it's out of our control and fret and go into hysterics and engage in the learned helplessness that's been programmed and drilled into us ever since most of us came up through the um, public education system here. Well, and private. I mean, it's the schooling system as designed to just turn us into highly productive with just enough like critical and creative thinking to make companies a lot of money, but not question the systems that you're going to be working for and ultimately exploited by. Can't go too far. And it's at a point that there just aren't really any meaningful jobs anymore. And I've gotten sidetracked from the issue of Venezuela a little bit of, um, you know, we are feeling the economic warfare employed against us with just removing the last of the social safety net, cutting food stamps, cutting, wanting to get rid of Medicaid for, I believe, tens of millions of Americans. Um, and not raising even nominal wages in years by and large in the midst of rising food and gasoline and utility costs. You know, the sanctions that the US was employing against Venezuela for 20 years before this supposedly awful dictator was overthrown absolutely devastated that country when it should be a thriving economic and natural resource powerhouse, because it, under both Chavez and Maduro, in spite of economic sanctions, had and has broad popular support, which is why this supposed goodwill U.S. invasion, even though anyone who still believes that is a moron, as the president, the just openly authoritarian dictator of the U.S. at this point, said it was for the oil. So stop. Just when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And yes, even though he's a pathological liar, I don't think he's lying as a joke of, hey, we actually did this to help them because I'm secretly a good guy. I, I don't think I don't think anyone, even people that are supporters at this point, well, maybe they do believe he's a genuinely good guy, but he would definitely be bragging about it. He would not be coy. And that the people there were actually getting screwed over by an element of the economy with food distribution that was still privatized and jacking up the prices. If that was something that was able to be further controlled through a public economic planning body, then maybe they would have a shot. But the U.S. has absolutely devastated the place to the point where um, probably to get some kind of economic activity going has engaged in, uh, you know, by and large, a very significant amount of their economy has been liberalized, which AKA means privatized. That's what it always means. And privatization at this point does not equate to liberty. We live in, you could say, outside of, no, it probably is. I would say the US is the most privatized country in the world. I mean, corporations run everything. I was going to say maybe it's Singapore, maybe it's Japan or South Korea. It's such a close race to the bottom. But no, it's we are completely captured by a privatized economy run by and for corporations. Do you feel free in the United States? Do you think the United States is going to bring freedom to Venezuela? We, again, bring it back to Iraq and Afghanistan. Did we bring freedom there? Do you really think that this godforsaken land is capable of anything resembling human good and not its own naked self-interest? Um, no, and that's why people hate this place. That's why people still, will rag on Americans for us not doing enough to stop this, as they have been resisting U.S. imperial and colonial violence while we are protesting. But if we're really here with our fellow man, can we let this continue? Because it's starting to get out of control. And I just want to say that the way out of it is, like I said, not consulting things that are outside of this world, but it's really trying to get a grasp on the historical threads and links and causality that we're aware of and that have some kind of actual tethering to this reality. Those are the things that are more within our control to analyze and meaningfully resolve collectively, as human beings, rather than just leaving it up to basically divine intervention at that point. If we're leaving it to cosmic forces being at the helm, even if they are, let's do what we can, even if it's a losing fight, because we know that's right. We know that it's right. So I don't feel like I have too much more on top of that, but if you're really trying to get like a grounding of the current global system of domination that has us in its grasp, which is just international finance capital in a global system of hegemony that we call capitalism, that is in its death throes, has been in its death throes since honestly World War I, and we've been trying to find, and by we I mean not any of us, but the ruling class that rules over all of us, the international bourgeoisie. And they exist in every single country that has global economic relations on the planet at this point. The global marketplace, so great, so free. And yeah, it's that body. I lost my train of thought there. Apologies for ASMR. You'll probably just wake up if you did fall asleep during this. Don't blame you. That was the point. And we're just like, oh, I'm so confused. Well, apologies for me not making it any easier for you. But the international bourgeoisie that exists in every country, they have basically decided we are not going to, for the sake of the planet, for environmental sustainability, for avoiding massive wars, and both directly and proxy wars for natural resources. They have decided, no, we're going to go full bore, and we're just going to, since World War I, just kind of try to um, pass enough social safety benefits by um, still keeping our current system of global colonialism and exploitation to harvest natural resources on the cheap in order to continue to um, underpay and overwork workers in the home countries, so that because we are just again stealing resources from the colonial world, able to sell our exploited workers cheap commodities that we don't pay them enough for them generating. So that's the very, very like paint by numbers version of uh, colonialism and imperialism in the Leninist sense that's going on. Um, and all of this is leading into, if you're trying to get that fundamental understanding of those material versus metaphysical conditions that have led us to here, and if you're looking for material inspiration for how we can think and interact with the world in a way that can tangibly resist the international system of oppression that's got us under its heel right now, and the fact that it is the epicenter of it is the United States of America. This is why the world hates the US citizens. This is why it's time for us to do our part in resisting, like everyone that's been at the knife's edge, at the end of the barrel of US imperialism. Well, it's happening to us. And it's time to stop just being sad about us, too. And I am sad about us. We're not doing well here in America. And most people are, by and large, like the vast majority, just decent people that want a decent life. But the minority is loud, and it's powerful and well funded, and we're going to need to get organized by actually we need to rebuild labor unions. We need to stand with each other as people that are forced to sell ourselves to survive against the people that just want to pluck us from the mass of humanity. No, we're more than that. We're worth more than that. And resisting by working outside of the standard paradigm of the 9 to 5 as much as possible does help. But most of us are still stuck within that confine, even if it's a bullshit job. But even if it's a bullshit job, we need to start building unions, and maybe they won't exist in that traditional sense that they used to exist, of everyone goes to the local. I don't know how it's going to work for like fully remote work. I don't know how it's going to work for gig economy stuff. I don't know how it's even going to work in the traditional factory environments anymore. They're laying off jobs en masse. We may just have to form like independent unions and associations of just working class people in the United States. And we need to build a working class party. If unions as they're currently structured are not just like we need to build the labor movement again. Um, but they can't be done, it seems like, through mostly compromised unions in the US. Um, although there are some good offshoots, like within the UAE. Or UAE. Definitely not get any good offshoots from the UAE. Oh God. In the UAW, I believe there is a democratic movement going on within that union, which has traditionally been highly corrupt. It's really a shame what happened to the AFL CIO. CIO actually used to be something to be proud of in like the 1930s, but we're 100 years removed from that at this point. But the IWW has good guides on union organizing. We just have so much that we have to do and can do in our own way, but it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take even more work, and we're already stressed out, and we're low-key scared of each other. And we're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, but we can't afford to do that because that will only help the fascists win, um, because we're just not preparing on our side. And the way that we need to prepare is through union building and trying to build a working class party, a legitimate third party. People cannot vote for Democrats or Republicans anymore. The whole theme of this has been it's the system. The system is the problem. Donald Trump is a particularly malignant tumor in the U.S. cancerous government body. The U.S. is just a cancer. It doesn't even, it's just a fucking cancer, and we live in an economic zone of interest. What do we have to lose at this point? We are reaching the, like I said, knife's edge of capitalism coming home, because they're running out of real estate to meet their insane profitability numbers. So they're nakedly stealing resources from other countries, openly encouraging mass genocide in Palestine, occupied Palestine, in order to steal oil reserves that are there, but also for their own disgusting real estate colonization projects, additional resource theft, probably going to want to take over the area to gain leverage over China, that is trying to have the Belt and Road Initiative, or was trying to have the Belt and Road Initiative extend through Haifa, which is why there's been no meaningful global resistance to U.S. imperialism, because every international actor is somewhat okay with what's going on in the States, while us by our billions are disgusted and horrified by it. But they're making money, so they better hope there's not anything beyond this for them, because it's only going to be worse. But we can't be hoping for the hereafter. We've got to do what we can now. And I'm sorry I spent most of this without the mic, but I was feeling particularly inspired after saying I'm going to wrap it up. I guess that's like a challenge to myself. But I just wanted to put into perspective that, we as Americans do need to start doing things, because the world has put up with us enough, and they have a right to be mad at us. And I'm going to tell you that the solution to start figuring out what to do is you need to start reading anti-capitalist literature. You need to start reading Marxist literature, because it is the best meaningful economic alternative that exists to the system cannibalizing the world and all of the people in it, capitalism. It is what it is, folks. We can't go back to what you thought were the idyllic days of mom and pop shops, which still suck to work for. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I understand why they build up the mythology for it, but why people would actually buy into that crap is it's just, it kind of goes to the lack of education and critical thinking in the US. That leads to our learned helplessness to think that it's just vote for a Democrat or Republican and everything will be fine. No, we need to learn how to build something. And you're going to learn how to build something through reading anti-capitalist theory and Marxist theory that shows here's how you build systems for people that are within your own social station, aka working class people, and don't pretend like you're some special middle class person. That's fucking propaganda too. And this is how you get together with them in ways that can oppose the institutions that defend capital and global imperialism to defend the interests of international capital. This is how you meaningfully oppose it, by organizing with your fellow man. And that's stuff that we need to start reading and getting literate on now. And yeah, I'll show my face. You know, this camera is shit for right now. Maybe I should keep it shit so it's harder to ID. But who cares, man? At this point, we need to show that we're willing to resist, to not just defend ourselves, but we need to stand up for the world at this point, because the United States is the biggest threat to world peace right now, and occupied Palestine, known under the false identity of Israel, as it is occupied by the Zionist government there, backed by Western imperial interests. It is essentially just an extension of the United States of America and the West. And the West is, you know, by and large, in many ways, an extension of the U.S., but also is a colony of the U.S., of at least a financial colony, pretty much ever since the end of World War One. We've been living in the aftermath of that still. And it's why the 20th century was such a turbulent time, because capitalism still exists, and the U.S. is the thug defending its interests all over, defending, I use in air quotes, its interests all over the world, has murdered, very likely at this point, hundreds of millions of people. And I'm not talking about just the U.S. alone, but by and large the U.S., but also any lackeys, any capitalist lackeys, and competing interests that existed as well. So I'll wrap it up with that now, to just say we need to resist the U.S. meaningfully outside of protests now. The government's not going to listen. It's not by and for us, regardless of what the myth makers have led us to believe. Those days are done. We need to organize a political party and labor unions and associations outside of the confines of the private sector, where regular people can meet and hang out and discuss politics on an actionable level, so that we can actually organize versus sit here and spectate, because that's what the world's frustrated with. And now that we don't have any treats, what do we really have to lose? So, thank you for listening to the low quality audio wise recording. Needed to get the thoughts out, and there will be more to come with a better mic and camera if you enjoy that. And also planning on getting some games up so that people can listen to this as stuff during the day, with just little gameplay footage on the background, sometimes comforting, as well as just a screen off ASMR type thing, because, well, it's probably not very ASMR-y, but um, I'm just making up words at this point. Not very ASMR-y, but probably not great audio quality now. That'll be improved. But it was important to get the thoughts out, as I am trying to catalog things more and more in vlog form to just see how the shit show that is the US and global political and economic landscape is. So brace yourselves, folks, because the labor recession is going to get worse. The U.S. authoritarian clampdown, both domestically and abroad, is going to get worse. And we need to engage in international solidarity, not just amongst ourselves, but uniting with the billions of people all over the world that understand that U.S. hegemony needs to end. It's been at the other end of it, and we need to lean on each other for support. And they've been through some stuff before at the edge of U.S. imperialism. People within the United States, a lot of them are in prison. Have been at the knife's edge of U.S. imperialism coming home, particularly marginalized communities. Black and Hispanic people in the U.S. have been at the knife's edge of U.S. imperialism come home. We need to engage in international solidarity to understand the stories of people oppressed abroad and how that is impacting us internally in the U.S. by meaningfully connecting with the communities most impacted by it, the Black and Hispanic communities, women experiencing violence, LGBT people, Muslims. You need to talk with the people that are being oppressed to understand the situation materially. And like I said, that is internationally. We need to learn from people that have engaged in struggles against U.S. imperialism, like Ho Chi Minh, like Mao Zedong. These are people like Joseph Stalin. These are scary names. And yeah, I just said that one, and people were just like, turn them off, that tanky. And you're allowed to just completely discount that if you want, but anyone who is actually doing their research at this point and understands just how thoroughly propagandized we have been to almost have that as like a Pavlovian dog response of he said the real S word. Like I saw it for a commercial for like animal control that like a girl was asking a question, who's a the dad was like, there is not a worse father than me. And then the girl is just like, oh yeah, name one. And he said Stalin. And then she just did a little roll, the eye roll. I don't know why that was an eye roll moment. TV is just garbage, but I mean, I didn't know that you were aware of Stalin's paternal tendencies. If you read his stuff and if you actually try to dive into the circumstances that led to decisions that were being made, everything becomes a whole lot more understandable. But anyone that, like I said, has that Pavlovian dog response of just Stalin bad. I mean, you should question why it evokes such a visceral response in you. And if it does, try to get to the root of it by reading about the man. And he actually wrote a lot too. You should try to do that. And then people would come back and be like, oh, but we should do that with reading Mein Kampf. Sure. Yeah, read that fucking garbage. In fact, read it and compare it to stuff that Stalin wrote. And you will realize that Stalin worse than Hitler. Anyone who ever says that is just you don't know what you're talking about. And you should actually be ashamed for thinking that anybody is worse than Hitler at this point, unless you're, I don't know, trying to group. Stalin is not in that category. Stalin did not just want to genocide an entire race of people. What are you talking about? I mean, actually, no, more than one in Hitler's case. We can't forget about the Slavs and the Gypsies, and oh yeah, he wanted LGBT people gone. Weird. It almost sounds like it's what's happening in the U.S. right now, and it is. And that's why I said we need international solidarity and to understand marginalized communities. And with that, let me also say, if you're getting angry reactions from people against the U.S., just know it's because they're desperate for us to do something about the occupation that we're under, because the whole world's under that occupation, but they are facing even more excruciating suffering at the end of U.S. imperialism than we are. So they want us to stop getting cozy and to fight for them. And we're scared. We don't even know where to begin, more than anything, beyond being scared. But it starts with building unions and not trying to vote your way out of it. Democrats, Republicans, get that out of your mind. You're done. You have moved on from that. What you need is to start building a third party. It could be the Green Party. DSA could start running candidates. There could be a new spontaneous formation that comes up in certain local municipalities, and then it starts to rise more and more. But look at what's happening with Mamdani. From day one, he was compromised when he said that the New York dynastic family member and corrupt police commissioner Jessica Tisch could stay in charge still. He's doing nothing to meaningfully kick ICE out of the cities. You're not going to vote your way out of this, and it feels insurmountable, but just go easy on yourself and just take it one step at a time. Yeah, the actionable thing to do, if we're really like just starting from, square one at this point, read Principles of Communism or the Communist Manifesto. I would recommend Principles of Communism, but also Communist Manifesto is very good. And go to a DSA meeting for your closest chapter. I'll leave it at that. We're going to start small, even though we are at a crisis point in history, but maybe something small like that. And if going to the meeting is too hard, just join DSA. Just join. Commit to going to a meeting soon, though. And that's what we just need to do, is actually start walking. And then maybe we can, once we start flexing our anemic political muscles again, maybe we can actually build something worthwhile. So let's see how this goes.